Ladies and gentlemen, our referee has called a stop to this contest, declaring the winner by knockout and new MMA show! Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another very exciting episode of and new MMA show. I am your host, Michael Hansen, and I do all kinds of exciting things with microphones because I'm a ring announcer and cage announcer, and I am joined this week by only one of my two co-hosts. We are man down. But introducing first in New York, he is Mark Priaulx. What's up, buddy?
What's up? What's happening? Ready to do the two-man show.
Two-manner.
Happy to have this escape right now to talk a little bit of MMA because my kids are being fucking maniacs today, so they are finally sleeping, and I can check out and talk a little MMA here, minus one Nicaraguan nightmare.
Yes, and I have empathy for you, my friend, because my 3-year-old he's a handful lately. He really is. But yes. Yeah, I need to put him in wrestling, like you do with your older kid.
Dude, they're both in it. Dean's been in it too since he was like...
They have it that young?
I guess since he turned 3. I think since he turned 3. So it's been like over 6 months.
What do they do with 3-year-olds?
He fucking dominates kids in wrestling.
Wow.
His best friend, who lives like a block away from us, is literally twice his size. And Dean is such a freaking animal that he just mushes this kid into the ground every class. And the kid like cries, and Dean's like, "No, it's okay. Like, I'm supposed to beat you." Like,
I hate to say that. I'm afraid my son would probably be getting mashed because he's just a wet noodle of a body.
But dude,
right
a million
now.
Kids get mashed, and then they get there.
He'll find his thing in life. I
don't
know if it's wrestling.
The only thing is, it has turned Dean, like with Lucas, it worked exactly how you'd want it to work, like confidence and like discipline. It has turned Dean into like a fucking menace. Like he just hits everyone. Like I said to you before, he just walks up to me and like punt and like does like a 1-2 in my balls. Like he's like jab hook in my balls. Like it's painful.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
It's good to know, dude. It's a good public service announcement that, like, just beware. It might give your kid good confidence and discipline. It might turn him into a menace.
Yes. Yes.
All right. Well, Omar, as we alluded to, we're a man down because Omar had a bit of a health scare. He had to get his appendix out, like, in a real emergency. He texted the two of us a photo of himself like in a hospital bed. He's like, "So this just happened."
Yeah, I thought he had a training injury at first when I saw it.
Yeah, same. But unfortunately, it does affect his training. He's actually the most sad about the fact that he has to abstain from training for a good month or so. And I'm like, dude, you need to take a few months off, dude. You just you just went under the knife, my man.
Yeah.
But obviously we're super happy that Omar's okay. And drop a comment below, folks, and wish Omar well, speedy recovery, full recovery, and all those good things. He told us that it was not a lingering issue, but his appendix. What am I right? Is his appendix or his?
Yeah, and he said it wasn't the first time. He said he had an issue once in the past, and they dealt with it with antibiotics. I don't even remember what he said, and it worked that time. But then this time, once it happened again, it was right into surgery.
Yeah. Yeah, my wife had her appendix out. It ruptured on her. This was a good 15 years ago, way before we were married. So I know from her story that like when an appendix ruptures or is about to rupture, like you do not fuck around. You need to go like right to surgery, like right now before something happens. So that's probably what it sounds like will happen to Omar. So maybe he'll rejoin us next week. It might be a 2-man show for a little bit of a stint here, but either way, we'll piece it together.
Yep. Yeah, that's true. I didn't even think about that it could be more than a 1-week absence, but I guess
depends on how long he's hopped up on like painkillers and hydrocodone or whatever he's on.
Hopped up on Mountain Dew.
Yeah, man. Let's talk about this little 2-man show we're going to do tonight. Yes. We're going to talk about a handful of fights from this past weekend's UFC Fight Night, Fiorot versus Blanchfield. We're going to preview Excuse me. We're going to get an update in Mark's rankings, the Priaulx rankings. Then we're going to preview PFL's first regular season events coming up this weekend. PFL 1 for 2024. Here we go. Another season for PFL. Very exciting stuff. And another UFC fight night this weekend. I think this is the last fight night before 300. Am I wrong?
You are correct.
I'm correct. So this weekend we have UFC fight night. It's Allen Curtis 2.
Correct.
So,
yep.
Brendan Allen taking on Chris Curtis going down at the UFC Apex. We're going to get to all of this in just a little bit. But first, let us address our audience, Mark. If you guys are watching this right now on YouTube, thank you so much. If you're new here, do us a favor. Subscribe to our channel so that you never miss a video. If you've been enjoying some of our content and you haven't subscribed yet, you silly Billy, subscribe, hit the bell icon so that you get notified anytime we drop a new video or clip, and you stay up to date with us as we talk about the sport that we all love. Drop us a comment down below. If I haven't said that before, I don't think I've ever said this before, Mark. If you like any of our takes, let us know down in the comments. If you disagree with any of our takes, that's okay. That's what we're here for. We're here for the lively debate. We want to know your take. Let us know down in the comments. As always, keep it classy. Hey, if you want audio only, we got you there. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, find us on social media. You can find us on all the relevant platforms at @andnew_MMA show. Okay, Mark, let's get into this. This week, the name on the marquee has certainly got to be Manon the Beast Fiorot, who this past weekend defeated Erin Blanchfield by a unanimous decision. The fight went down in Atlantic City in Erin Blanchfield's home court here. But it did not, unfortunately, go her way. The visiting team spoiled the party and went home back to France with the win. It was a very unanimous decision. I believe all three judges scored at 50-45 in favor of the French lady. Mark, give us your thoughts. There was a lot said about the game plan of Blanchfield and her corner going into this fight. What are your thoughts? I can't hear you.
And I'm back.
Oh, sorry
about the mute. Yeah, there's not a whole lot to break down in this fight. Manon Fiorot was able to really fight the exact fight that she wanted to fight, and Erin Blanchfield was not able to do anything to change that. She definitely got exposed a bit here for a girl who had a ton of hype behind her coming into this. The size and the strength of Manon Fiorot, I think, was a real problem for her. She kept Erin outside all fight long and picked her apart. Even when they did clinch, the strength was evident and clearly causing problems for Blanchfield. Erin couldn't find any way to enter effectively without being countered. She couldn't find any way to enter effectively to land meaningful shots of her own. They were all kind of like chasing extended shots. Her takedown entries were forced for the most part. It was all Manon. And I'm surprised by that because Manon did nothing new here. She fought exactly how we've seen her fight in all of her previous fights. So that kind of brings me around to what you said as you threw this to me, which is the game plan. Like, I understand it's possible that, Fiorot was just bigger and better than Erin and her team had imagined, and maybe things were harder than they expected them to be. But that aside, you would think this whole camp would have been spent on working different entries into the striking or the takedowns. Like that Blanchfield wasn't going to win this fight on the outside. I think anyone was well aware of that coming into this fight. So you would think when you are fighting Manon Fiorot, you are drilling all camp different entries to be able to work your own game against a girl who is trying to prevent that. And it didn't really seem like anything we saw from Erin had much of a plan behind it. Like, she just got outclassed, and she looked a little desperate at times. She looked like she wasn't sure how to try to change the fight at times, how to approach it. So I don't know. It was strange. I think I and everyone else expected more from Blanchfield. You know, if she lost, she lost, but I think just somewhat more of a showing than what we got from her there, because she really did get outclassed. You know, Manon looked good. I know she doesn't set the world on fire as a contender that people are like chomping at the bit to see fight for the title, just because her style is not really one where she's looking for the finish. But it's gotten her now to the door of the title, so you can't really complain.
No, you can't. I mean, and at the very least, I think she is sort of a newer face. I mean, don't look now; she's like 7-0 in the UFC, but she still, to me, feels like she's kind of a fresh face on the women's side of the promotion here.
Yep.
But yeah, I think it was a case where I think Fiorot is. I think she seems bigger in there than her 5'7" build height. Gives the first impression.
Totally agree.
And she fights big. She seems like a big, athletic, physically strong girl. And let's not forget, she's this is going against my usual shtick here. She's 10 years older than Blanchfield. Blanchfield's only 24.
Yep.
So maybe she's got that mom strength. She's got that middle-aged lady strength. And Blanchfield was a little bit surprised by that. Blanchfield usually, even against someone like a Jessica Andrade, Blanchfield, you would think going into that fight that Andrade is going to be the stronger, more compact, like a freaking fire hydrant is Andrade. But Blanchfield bodied her. So here we go against Fiorot, and just too tall, too big, too skilled, and Blanchfield just could not exact her will in this fight and couldn't execute a game plan. And pretty disappointing. But again, as I just alluded to, she's only 24 years old. Almost 25. She's 24 years, 10 months. And so soon to be 25, but still very, very young for the sport. Very, very young to be in the UFC, and especially very young to be this high in any division in the UFC.
Yeah, no, that's crazy young to be in a title eliminator. And she's, you know, by no means is like the book closed on Erin Blanchfield. I'm sure she will be back, and we will see plenty more great performances from her. But there's some tape to watch. That's for sure.
Yeah. So Blanchfield's record now falls to 12-2, and the French lady, is it? I mean, I want to say Frenchman. Is it French woman? French woman, French lady.
French woman. That sounds like it could
French
be the case.
Okay. Fiorot's record climbs down to 12-1. The one, by the way, just glancing down her record once again, her debuting pro bout was a split decision loss to Bellator's Leah McCourt. And that was a fight at Cage Warriors 94. But that was a split decision loss. So worth noting, in each and every single one of Manon Fiorot's pro fights, at least one judge gave her the win. For those that went to the distance, obviously. She does have a couple by TKO. Let's talk about where the beast goes from here, Mark.
I mean, we know the answer. She is certainly going to sit and wait for her title shot at this point. There's really no reason to do anything else. There's no one. I mean, I guess they could say like, oh, you got to fight Maycee Barber. But in my opinion, there's no one else she should be fighting. She should be in line for the winner of Alexa and Valentina. She may have to wait a little bit, as I said, but I think that's exactly what she'll do.
Okay. And the young New Jerseyan, Erin Blanchfield, like I said, her record now falls to, 12-2? So, no, not 12-2. I'm sorry. Yeah, 12-2. The records are very close. What do you think could be next for her?
So I think she is the one who should be fighting Maycee Barber. You guys know, last week I mentioned how I really want to see Rose paired with Natalia Silva. That's what I'm hoping for. Obviously, those girls are kind of in this mix as well as potential opponents for Erin. But I think Erin and Maycee is the fight to make at this point.
I like it. Erin Blanchfield and Maycee Barber. That'd be tremendous. Because what was the talk for Maycee to fight? Was it Dern?
I don't think it was Dern. That's not the right weight class.
Oh, what was the chatter of who Barber could be fighting next?
I hadn't heard any.
Oh, you hadn't? Oh, okay.
No.
That'd be a tremendous fight, and they haven't fought each other yet.
Nope.
Man, that'd be a tough one. Who who would I be rooting for in that fight? I love them both so much. I mean, I got to go with Blanchfield, man. I know some of her team now.
I figured you would.
Yeah, got to. But dude, I love the future, man. Okay, let's move on. Ooh, this is going fast. Sorry, Omar. Okay, in the co-main event, Joaquin Buckley gets the biggest win of his career by defeating Vicente Luque in the second round, the official time 3:17 of round number 2 by TKO via ground and pound. Mark, what were your impressions of how this fight played out with Buckley?
This was an odd finish, and not even close to the oddest one of the night, which tells you something about the type of night this was.
Oh my God.
Which we'll get to some of it. But at the end of the fight, Joaquin Buckley got on top of Luque and started swinging, and Luque just kind of covered up in survival mode for no apparent reason. We hadn't seen him get hurt. We hadn't seen any issue, and he just kind of covered up like a guy who was trying to survive. He didn't try to change the position. He didn't try to hold on to Buckley. There was no attempt to buck or to scramble. He just kind of accepted the shots that were coming to him. And this is a guy in Luque who never quits in a fight. And, you know, he has that reputation, and he's in a big spot here. He's back fighting where he was born and where he lived his early childhood in New Jersey. He has, you know, family and friends in the stands. A co-main event, and he just kind of stopped fighting. I don't get it. And it's not like he was being outclassed to that point. Like, yes, maybe Buckley took round 1, but if he did, it was a close round. You know, the speed was helping Buckley. Maybe he was scoring a little more. Round 2 was kind of the same, but Luque was certainly landing his shots as well. You know, there was no reason to think Luque still couldn't have won that fight at that point in time. You know what I mean? Like, it's not as if he got his ass beat for 2 rounds and his will was broken or something. It was just a very normal fight with not so many big moments to speak of to that point. And he shot this takedown. It got stuffed, and he pulled guard. And that was it. He put his hands to his head, and they never left. Like, you know, like I said earlier, he never tried to grab Buckley. He doesn't even turn to his side. He just accepts 30 shots. He didn't even close his guard. His guard sat open the whole time. Like, I don't know. I don't understand it. I really wish I could hear Luque explain, like, what his thinking was, and I haven't yet, because when it ended, the thought in my head, and I hate saying this, is that it was a fixed fight. Like, that's what it felt like to me. I was just like, what I just watched didn't make any sense. And I don't want to consider that as what was actually happening, but I watched Vicente Luque seemingly choose to not fight anymore. And I don't get why. And I don't want to take anything away from Buckley, just to finish by complimenting him. You know, he fought a great fight, and he poured it on, and he finished a guy who was ranked number 11 in the division. So big for him. He's now firmly in the mix. The move down to 170 is paying dividends, but the storyline for me was just, again, especially for a fighter like Luque, how confused I was with what happened at the end.
The two thoughts that enter my head are either he was carrying some kind of injury with him into the fight, and at some point in the fight, something flared up on him, or he was more hurt than we realized watching it.
Like, by what? Nothing landed. Like, even to make it weirder, in the post-fight, Joaquin Buckley goes, yeah, you know, he was blocking all that. Don't worry. He's not hurt. He's fine. Like, it was very much like...
It was odd.
I don't know. It was just fucking strange. The whole thing was strange. I would like to hear Omar's take on it too, but I don't get it. And I'm not the only one who's been... I've seen other people tweeting the same thing.
Yeah. I mean, either way, it definitely is the biggest name on Joaquin Buckley's record at this point. He improves now to 18-6 as a pro. Under the UFC banner, he improves to 8-4. That was his 6th knockout / TKO finish in the UFC. You know, he's amassing quite the record. His last 3 wins: Andre Fialho, Alex Morono, and now Vicente Luque in the welterweight ranks here. So what do you think could be or should be next for Numansa?
So my first thought was Jeff Neal. They're at a very similar spot in the rankings. I think it could be an interesting matchup. Then I realized that they they kept Neil Magny above him in the rankings as well, which I wasn't expecting. So I know Magny maybe doesn't feel like a step forward after Luque, but for whatever reason, they have kept Magny ahead, or actually, I guess they're tied. They're both 11, but Magny's name's on top. And really, anyone above Neil or Magny is like into the elites, who I don't think Buckley has quite made it to as of yet. So I guess the Magny fight would work as well. So I'll say either one of those would make sense.
What if he fought MVP?
I think they're giving MVP a bigger fish than
Bigger
that.
fish.
But I mean, it'd be fun. It's like I'd be down.
That's true. I mean, I would be down.
Yeah.
Let's talk quickly about the silent assassin here, Vicente Luque, who has been too silent after this loss. I would love to see him take to his social media or something and be like, "Hey guys, this is what happened. This is what was going through my head."
Totally. Like I looked for it because I just figured, I was like, he is going to say something that was too strange, especially as I said, like in his, I guess it's hometown. He lived there till he was like 6 or 7 or something. So hometown, the whole deal, like you would think he would have something to say. I'm surprised he has not.
Right. Like it may very easily be something like, I tore my MCL in training, like the fight week, and I didn't want to pull out, but I was done. Or like I got concussed in training and during fight week or something like that. And he was like, I was just more fucked up than I realized. Who knows? So his record now falls to 22-10 with 1 draw. And he falls to 15-6 under the UFC banner. Unfortunately for Luque, he has now lost 3 of his last 4 to Bilal, Jeff Neal, and now Joaquin Buckley, the one victory being over RDA. That being said, Mark, what could and should be next for the silent assassin at welterweight?
I actually think there's a fight that works out really perfectly. People have talked about in the past the idea of Vicente Luque and Kevin Holland matching up with each other. And, I think people thought of it at the time as more of like a 2 guys on the way up type of thing. This is a different scenario now, but I still think it works really well. They're both clinging to the rankings. Luque's 14, Holland's 15. As you said, Luque's lost 3 of 4. Holland has lost 2 in a row. But they're both such exciting fighters, at least typically speaking. So I think you make this fight, you hope you get a banger, and you let one guy, get back on track.
100%. I love that. I mean, dude, welterweight is pretty stacked going even outside of the rankings. Like guys like Dalby, Fakhretdinov is still there. Randy Rude Boy Brown, he's so good.
That's the other name I considered saying, actually.
Brown.
Yeah, but haven't they fought? I think that's why I didn't say it. I think I checked. Yeah, I couldn't remember that fight that well, but yeah, Luque beat him a few years back.
Okay, let's keep rolling along here, Mark. 2-man show. By the way, anybody who's watching on YouTube, what do you think happened to Vicente Luque? Let us know down in the comments. Do you think? I mean, I cannot believe that Vicente Luque has that kind of quit in him. We have never ever seen that from him, and I cannot believe that is the scenario. I have to believe that it was some kind of injury, an injury or earlier concussion or something like that. Who knows? But I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. Okay.
For sure.
Speaking of weird finishes, man, this was the weirdest. It wasn't even weird. It was just unfortunate, bro. It was just unfortunate.
Yes.
In the middleweight division, Chris Weidman defeats Bruno Silva, ruled a technical unanimous decision, originally ruled a TKO finish for Weidman, but then upon review, basically in the 3rd round of a 3-round fight, Bruno Silva closed the distance and tried to land a power punch, and Weidman defended and landed his own check hook, which dropped Bruno Silva, and then he pounced on him and finished him. But upon the replay review, Chris Weidman landed not 1, but 2 eye pokes. He managed to poke him in both eyes very quickly. I give him credit. And also not really land the punch. So Bruno Silva just falls to the ground in agony, having both of his eyeballs just punctured with fingernails. It sucked, dude. It sucked. And the one thing I can't understand, I just can't understand it. And if you know, Mark, please school me here. Why would that not be changed to a no contest?
So it's because it was not deemed as an intentional foul. It's because it was deemed accidental, and that because of an accidental foul, the fighter, Bruno Silva, could not continue. And we had made it through, I forget what the cutoff is. I forget if it's a round and a half or 2 rounds, but there's a cutoff. And if it's before that, then it has to be a no contest because there's not considered enough of a scorecard to score the fight. But because we had made it past the cutoff, it goes to the scorecards as opposed to being a no contest. And Weidman was ahead on all cards.
Do the judges?
And they took a point from Weidman as well for the
for
the accidental foul. So he lost a point for round 3.
Interesting.
Which all the judges had him winning. So that became 9-9. But he had already won round 1 and round 2, so it didn't matter UD for Weidman.
Do the judges score the third round?
Yeah,
even though it didn't go to the 5 minutes.
Well, so I think that's a question too. I forget how many minutes had elapsed in that round, so I don't remember if the point doc was in round 3 actually, or if it was like an overall point doc of the prior 2. But either way, even with the point removed, Chris was still ahead. I'm actually going to look right now and see if the cards are up. Chris, Weidman, Bruno, Silva.
How bizarre.
Yeah, so they did score round 3.
For Weidman.
Yes. But then I guess the point was removed, and yeah.
Okay, so Mark, give us your take on how the first 2.5 rounds played out between Weidman and Silva.
I mean, as a whole, it was a mess, an absolute mess. And like you said, they added to the mess by giving him this TKO at first and then changing it to the technical decision. It was just no one really understood what was going on. And the finish was bad. Like, I wish I could say it wasn't, as a fan of Chris's, because I was pumped watching him do pretty well in there. But it was 2 eye pokes after there had already been 2 others in the fight. You know, I do get what Chris was saying about how you can't just drop like that from an eye poke, because Bruno Silva was reacting very dramatically after every poke. But, like, some pokes are just fucking bad, man. Like, It happens. So I do feel bad for Silva, but I also feel, I guess, somewhat okay about this because Chris Weidman was winning the entire fight. I really, at no moment in that fight did I feel like Chris Weidman was not ahead. And as funny as it is to say, Chris Weidman looked a lot like Chris Weidman in this fight. Yeah. Like he really did. The way he pressured, the way he found angles for his heavier strikes and found advantages in all positions. Like, that's what made him great. And defensively, too, he controlled the range well. He rolled with shots and took them the way he used to. He always used to be so good at that, at just stepping just to the edge of shots and rolling with them, and he was doing it in this fight. There was no issues with his chin that you could see. It was really a vintage Chris Weidman performance. And as I said, he had absolutely won every round. So I don't hate him getting a win here on his record, despite all the controversy. I also would not have hated if it was no contest, because 4 fucking eye pokes is a lot of eye pokes. Yeah. I'm happy for Chris to see him have a night where he got to feel like his body was performing at the level he thought it still could, and to get that validation. That had to feel really good for him. So I'm happy that he got to have a night where he felt like his old self in there. I know it's marred a little bit, but he seemed to feel all right about it. And yeah, it's tough for Silva, but like I said, there wasn't a whole lot going right for him in that fight anyway.
MMA is really a sport that just chews you up and spits you out. And the longer you stay in it, the more this is going to happen. Just looking at Silva at Weidman's record, it really is a tale of 2 halves. for a guy who started out his pro career going 12-0, winning a world title from Anderson Silva, beating everybody, and now almost equal number of fights later, a lot more red on the record, man. After that Rockhold loss, it's just been a different story. But I'm so glad to see him back in the win column here with a win over Bruno Silva. I think time will eventually forget or forgive how this fight played out, and we'll just look back and be glad to see that green W on the record there.
Yes.
So that being said, he improves his UFC record now to 12-7. His overall record improves to 16-7. That was his what number here? His 4th UFC decision win. As weird as it was, what now could or should be next for Chris Weidman, Mark?
So, it's hard to match up Chris Weidman at this stage in his career. There's one line of thinking is like, he should kind of just be fighting like fellow vets. But, like Tavares was that. Bruno Silva really wasn't that. But the issue with that is most of the true vets in this division are kind of the guys toward the top. Like most of the guys that have been around a while are still up there. Like whoever you want to say, Hermanson, Paul Craig, like, Whitaker, and so on and so on. Obviously, he's not fighting these guys. That's not the level that he is at. So the choices that you have, I mean, you could go like a Mearshart to get him in there with a vet, but I kind of think you treat Chris Weidman like a guy who just got a win over Bruno Silva and who is planning on trying to be around for a few more fights, as he has said that he does. So I'm gonna put him in there with another contender that I think is at a similar level to where he's at, and that I think would make for a really interesting clash of styles. I don't want to say clash because they are both very good at this particular thing, but I'm gonna say Rodolfo Vieira, who is deserving of a pretty big fight. He's coming off the win over Armin Petrosyan, and I would just love to see Rodolfo Vieira try to submit Chris Weidman and see how Chris Weidman handles that.
Wow. The jiu-jitsu of Vieira and the wrestling pedigree of Chris Weidman would be pretty spicy. I mean, other guys around him, you have Malkoun coming off of a loss.
Coming off a win.
Oh, that's right. He's coming off of a win as well. I wouldn't want to match up with Brad Tavares again with those leg kicks.
No, he just fought Tavares.
I know. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, yeah.
I personally, I mean, I would love him to walk away on a win. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but he ain't doing that.
That's best case scenario for Weidman at this point. I don't think he's going to make a title run. He's just too far.
No, he's not going to make a title run. No,
that's what I'm saying.
Certainly not going to do that.
If he wins his next one, then he's got to walk away, because then he could say he's walking away on a win streak.
If he wins his next one, I think he's going to ask for a ranked fighter.
I know. What about GM3 for Weidman? What do you think of that?
That was the name I just said. I said if you wanted to go with a vet, that's probably the one that would make sense.
Yeah. But you're going to go with Vieira. Wow, tough fight.
Yeah, I mean, look, the GM3 one works too. To watch them grapple, I would sign up for that as well. That's a cool one. But let's trying to go outside the box a little bit.
I'm just looking at Vieira now. And he's not a guy. He doesn't have a single knockout in the UFC. I see what you're doing there, Mark. I see what you're doing there.
That's exactly what I'm doing.
You're keeping our boy safe.
Yes, that's correct.
I like it.
Yeah, he had to deal with Tavares and Silva, man. Silva was very much a knockout threat, and he navigated it. So let's let him get in there with someone who's not such a knockout threat.
There you go. Okay, let's keep marching down this card here. Let's see. Nursulton Ruziboev defeats Sedriques Dumas in the first round by knockout via uppercut and ground punches in the middleweight division. What were your thoughts on how this fight played out?
So this one started the weirdness of the night. Or it didn't start the weirdness actually, but it started the eye poke controversies. Yep. There was other weirdness before this one. And Ruziboev did poke Dumas in the eye. That much is clear. So, as clear as the Weidman one. And here the ref didn't see it. Should the ref have seen it and given Dumas time to recover? Yes. In a perfect world, that's what would have happened here. But Dumas also made a terrible decision in there to turn away completely from Ruziboev, searching for the ref the way that he did. You got to be a little bit smarter than that. We've seen this time and time again where guys choose to just look away and try to talk to the ref, and it never goes well. And Ruziboev was absolutely right to jump on him the way that he did and put him out. The ref had not said a word. He had not motioned anything. So yeah, you can't really fault Ruziboev for going for it the way that he did. And to his credit, similar to what I said about Weidman, maybe even more so here, before all this happened, Ruziboev was clearly winning this fight. It hadn't even been a full round, to be fair. So who knows what changes as the fight goes on, but it was all him to that point. He was totally in control. The step in right hand was landing beautifully for him all fight long. Dumas really wasn't offering anything in return. It seemed like he hadn't even necessarily figured out how to deal with what was in front of him yet. Yeah. So, you'd like to think Ruziboev would have won anyway, which makes you feel a little bit better about the result. But I guess truthfully, who knows?
Yeah, man. Weird night with eye pokes, man. Weird night with eye pokes. I'm going to ask you about Ruziboev, and then we're going to talk about those eye pokes a little bit more. But Ruziboev, his record improves now. Where the fuck is his record? There he is. His record now improves to 34-8 with 2 draws. In the UFC, he's now 2-0. 2 knockouts over Bruno, the Hulk Ferreira, and Sedriques Dumas now. Let's go, Mark. Where are we going next at middleweight with the fighter out of Uzbekistan?
So this is as far as I got pre-show in terms of predetermining my matchups. I kind of ran out of time today. So I am looking at this now. I want to, he already beat Bruno Ferreira, which is legit considering Bruno Ferreira has knocked out Gregory Rodriguez, who has a solid resume in this division. So I was surprised that he got someone as low as Dumas for his second fight. I get it that he's a little bit unproven and maybe they wanted to see what he had to offer, but I'd like to move him up the line some here.
How far up you want to go?
You know what? Nah, I'm not going to do that. Has Joe Pyfer been booked yet?
I don't think so. Be a great fight.
That might be what I do. Let's see. No, he has not. I'll throw that out. I will go with Joe Pyfer.
Joe Pyfer coming off of a loss to Jack Hermanson very recently. Okay.
Yeah. He's a tough guy to tell because his record pre-UFC was kind of all over the place. He had a lot of names on it that were guys with spotty records and all this, but 2 fights into the UFC, he looks like he's absolutely fantastic. So he certainly seems like the real deal at this point. So I don't know that there's any reason to keep slow rolling him.
Totally. Yeah. His record is deep too. Like he's got a lot of fights on his record, man. And
he does. He has a ton.
Yeah, I agree. I think they should go. Strap him to a rocket at this point. Let's go. Let's see what he can do. Okay, couple more here. Kyle Nelson versus Bill Algeo. Kyle Nelson defeats Bill Algeo by knockout in round number 1. The official time 4 minutes of round 1. Your thoughts, Mark?
I'll tell you what, man. This is an obvious statement, I guess, but Kyle Nelson has figured it out. This man started his UFC career 1-4, 1-4, and he is now finishing Bill Algeo in 1. Like I don't really know what to make of it, man. I don't know if it's been a mental switch for Nelson because I don't feel like we're watching anything so different from the game of Kyle Nelson that we've seen all along. But man, I mean, the win streak is now at 3, and he looked great here. He dropped Algeo early. Algeo did recover, and the fight started to look kind of how I expected it to. Algeo's movement and his variety were working. And I was watching, I was kind of like, all right, this fight's going to shift now as it goes on, and Bill gets a little more dialed in here. And then next thing you know, it's another bomb of an overhand right from Kyle Nelson. He pours it on. I'm not going to say I loved the stoppage, but I'm also not going to say I hated it. There's an argument to be made that if you're going to let Algeo push through what he was pushing through for however many seconds that ref let that go, then you have to wait until something more happens that changes it, because it kind of just the same thing was just still happening. He hadn't gotten necessarily more hurt. He was still just getting touched, but not going down, and still, waving him on. So nothing really happened to differentiate from the prior 20 seconds, I didn't think, but it was a lot. He was eating shots. So again, I don't hate it. It was a lot of shots, and you don't want to take anything away from Kyle Nelson, because that was a awesome performance and a huge win for him. And again, it's just a guy who is now very much on the map, who seemed like he was going to be a UFC washout. So it's a wild career turnaround for him. Yeah,
I mean, like you said, his first 5 fights in the UFC, he went 1-4, and then he had a draw. So you think, the guy only has 1 victory in his first 6 outings. And after the draw, you think this guy's probably going to get cut, but then he gets another one, and next thing you know, don't look now, he's 1-3 his last 3.
Yep.
So here we go. His record now improves to 16-5 with 1 draw. With the UFC, he's now 4-4 with 1 draw. Of course, that draw being with Duo Choi back in 2023. So what do you think, Mark? Who is around him? I see on one ranking site, let's see, Zalal, who just come off a win as well, is near him. What do you think? What would you say?
It's maybe not the sexiest name on earth, but it's kind of another guy who he's almost Kyle Nelson-esque in that he is up in this area a bit surprisingly, maybe, and that's Muhammadjan Naimov. He recently had that huge win over Nathaniel Wood. He is, as I said, he's kind of in the same place where it's like he's not too far outside of these ranked fighters, but it's a little bit like, man, is he really this good? And Kyle Nelson's kind of the same. So for whatever reason, my mind is wanting to pair the two of them up. So that is what I will do.
Another guy who coming off of a win recently, a little bit higher, I think, probably Julian Erosa. They could match up well, maybe. What do you think?
Did he fight Erosa? No. Who were his initial losses to?
Kyle Nelson.
I don't know why that's sort of in my mind.
No, I don't think so.
No, he didn't fight Erosa. Okay. So yes. Yeah, I don't hate that. That works for sure. Oh no, it was in my head because I was thinking about I had a Rosa connection in my head with Kyle Nelson because I was thinking about how Nelson beat Fernando Padilla and people kind of thought it was all about Padilla having a bad night. But you look at it now, and it's very easy to be like, man, Padilla's pretty good. Like, he finished Julian Erosa, and how good does that make Kyle Nelson for beating him? Like, it's like the narrative can flip on its head if we accept that Kyle Nelson is actually good.
Yeah, for sure. Let's see. Okay, next fight. We have a split decision in the welterweight division. Chidi Bang Bang Njokuani goes home with the victory, defeating Rhys McKee by split decision. The scorecards read. Here we go. Let me shoot this ad away. Sal D'Amato, 30-27 for Njokuani. Mike Lee, 30-27 for Njokuani. And Muna Kierdo. That's a newer name. I haven't heard that guy's name very much.
Yeah.
He scored at 29-28
That was
for
the
Rhys McKee.
person that had the baffling scorecard for Rhys McKee.
That's right. 29-28 for Rhys McKee. Mark, your thoughts?
Sorry if I was just talking over you. You froze for me.
That's all good.
I didn't realize that you froze. So I think we were both talking. Yeah, I don't know what this fight was from Rhys McKee. Maybe it was just that the calf kicks added up really quickly, and he was just that compromised. And if that is the case, then credit to Chidi for that, because Rhys McKee came out and fought a really solid round one. Like, he really fought it exactly how he needed to. He mixed it up. You know, it wasn't any crazy round, but he did a really good job to control the fight. And from that point on, he came out in round two, and there was really no game plan anymore from him other than trying to stall against the cage. And my only thought is that it was from how much he was feeling those calf kicks. And, you know, there were a lot of them early. Like, in that first round, I think Chidi landed about a dozen calf kicks. So my guess is that was it. And that after 5 minutes, Rhys McKee was just not the same fighter because his movement really got hampered.
Yeah.
So props to Chidi for that. You know, he didn't look amazing necessarily, but he fought a smart fight, and he pulled away as the fight went on, which is the opposite of what people were concerned with Chidi dropping down to welterweight. Everyone was wondering if he could handle the weight cut and if his cardio could handle it, myself included. I was very concerned. And I got to say, he looked fine. His cardio looked fine. His movement looked fine. Everything looked good. So good for him. Got himself a win, and we will see what he can do as a welterweight moving forward.
Yeah, man. Impressive and hopeful stuff for Njokuani, moving down to 170 pounds for the first time, coming off of three consecutive losses at middleweight to Gregory Robocop Rodriguez, Albert Jurayev, and Mikhail Oleksiejczuk. He said, I got to change something up, and he dropped down 15-pound cut now to welterweight. But he gets the W over Rhys McKee. And now he improves his UFC record to an even 3-3 and his overall pro record to now, 23-10 with one no contest. That being said, interesting to match a guy up at welterweight, Mark, who has only had one fight there under the UFC banner. But if you were the matchmaker, what would you do?
Yeah, I'm debating it right now. You want to give him, I think, an exciting fight since he didn't really have a chance to have that here. And you want to give him a chance to, you know, potentially get a knockout and get some buzz on his name as a welterweight. I'm trying to think who fits that bill. That's obviously, you know, a bit of a step up from Rhys McKee. I think I'm going to go Jeremiah Wells. He has established himself in this division. He has the win over Court McGee, he has the win over Matt Semmelsberger, but he is coming off 2 losses in a row. But he packs plenty of pop. You would think if you match those 2 guys up, somebody may get slept, and it's a chance for Chidi to get a win that establishes himself a bit as a welterweight. So that's what I will do.
Nice. Okay, I think one more here, and then we will move on to the rankings update here. No, 2 more. I'm sorry, 2 more. Because we did not preview this one last week, but it was so noteworthy that let's talk about it a little bit. In the featherweight division, Nate Landwehr gets another knockout victory over Jamall Emmers in round number 1, the official time 4:43 of the first round, followed by an all-time promo on the mic in the octagon. So give me your thoughts on all that.
You got to love this man. He's so fun every time he's in there. In this fight, he made such phenomenal adjustments. He was getting touched often and hard from range, right from jump in this fight. And after it happened a couple times, he reset himself and he bit down and he said, all right, I need to ugly this up. I need to get inside. And he was almost entirely forward from that point. Anytime that he had to back up, he really tried to minimize it and make it like one step where he then froze and held his ground and didn't let Emmers walk toward him. He pushed into the dirty boxing and he found a home for some big ones and he changed the fight. So props to him. Typical Nate the Train, honestly. An awesome finish. I love the dude on the mic. I love how every single time he says Nate the Train in the UFC as if it's like his debut. Meanwhile, he's been here for like fucking 8 fights or some shit by now, but he still says it every single time as if it's news that he's in the UFC. But yeah, it was awesome start to finish.
Yeah, he's 35, and yes, you're exactly right. 8 fights. He's 5-3 now in the UFC. So
that was a guess. Props to me.
Very good. Very good. Let's see. let's talk about where he goes from here, man. That promo, I'm not gonna lie, was it a little corn? Was it a little cheesy? Yeah, but I might have gotten some goosebumps, man. What was his line about Jean-Claude Van? Damn,
I
it
didn't
was
even
so
catch
good,
that.
dude. It was
I
so
did not
good.
even catch that. Jesus. Oh
It
man.
was so good. I love that I think it was Bisping was like trying to like talk to him about the fight, and every time he gave him back the mic, he just like yelled more. He's like,
Yes.
"Yeah, baby."
Yes. Yes.
Let's see. He's back in the win column after losing a decision loss against Dan Ige, which snapped a 3-fight win streak. So now he is 4 for his last 5 mark at welterweight. So the train is still rolling along here. And what is the next stop for Nate the Train Landwehr?
I'll throw out 2 guys. I'm trying to give Nate another action fight here. I don't want to give him some boring wrestler since he's here for our entertainment. Coincidentally, they have the same last name, but that's just how it shook out when I was trying to look for exciting guys who are around his area. And that is Du Ho Choi or Sung Woo Choi. I think either of them could be a crazy scrap.
Isn't that funny how that works out sometimes in these divisions?
Yes.
These names.
Yes.
I like it. Fight of the night honors earned from the promotion for Mr. Nate Landwehr. And well earned, man. Well earned. That guy is must watch MMA. He really is. Not only because his brashness and all that and his energy, and he is an action fighter for sure. He brings it. He looks for the finish always, and that's a huge part of it. But the dude is talented, man. I think he's a really skillful mixed martial artist.
Yeah. Yeah. Another idea I wouldn't hate is Bill Algeo. I know he's coming off the loss on this card that we just talked about, but he is more established in this division than Nate is. So it still is, a step upward for Nate. And that could be a crazy fight too.
For sure, man. For sure. Okay, one more, and then we will move on. So here we go. In the women's strawweight division, Virna Jandiroba gets the win over Luque Godinez after 3 rounds. It was a unanimous decision for the Brazilian here. Give us your thoughts on how this fight played out over 15 minutes.
So I'll say this. The first time I watched this fight, I was really frustrated with Luque. I thought she wasn't disengaging enough and that she was too willing to be connected with Virna and that it cost her the fight. And I saw since then a lot of tweets, saying the same thing about, her fight IQ was terrible. So in my head, I was like, yeah, I agree. But I got to say, once I rewatched the fight, I don't really feel like that was the case as much as I thought. The round where Luque willingly grappled, maybe more than she should have, was round 2, but that's the round she actually won on at least one card. I can't remember if it was 1 or 2. And I thought she won it on my card. In round 1 and round 3, which are the rounds that cost her the fight, she really was trying to continually disengage and to get back to the striking with Virna. It's just, I think that Virna is better than a lot of us give her credit for. I think we all underrate her. She just finds ways to get inside, and it's not always pretty, but she's absolutely dogged. She wears on you. She has a fantastic back take, which was a problem for Lupita, I think, in each of those rounds, once in each of those rounds. And even though Lupe probably won more minutes of the fight, Virna just found ways to steal both round 1 and round 3 once she was able to finally get inside and get to her grappling. So I think it's just that, people maybe don't give Virna the credit that she deserves as for how tricky she is to keep off of you. Now, I didn't think Lupe looked great. I thought she looked slower in her decision making. I thought like less sure of herself than she has in her recent fights. I don't know if it was because she was so concerned with not getting pushed back to the cage, but I didn't think it was any great performance from her, and I really thought she could break through here and that this was a big opportunity for her that she missed. But I want to give Virna her credit for continually finding ways to win at a high level.
100%, man. She improves now to 20-3. Speaking of being better than we're giving her credit for, And under the UFC banner, she improves to 6-3. That was her third decision win with the UFC to date. Those 3 losses are all under the UFC banner. All of them decision losses. She has never been finished as a pro. And here we go. Let's talk about what could be next for her at 115 pounds, Mark.
Yeah, I don't have a clue, to be quite honest, because she is so close to the top. We have Weili and Jan fighting each other. We have Tatiana Suarez, waiting and maybe going to fight Amanda Lemos. I forget if that's actually been rebooked already. I think that's kind of what everyone was expecting to happen, but I don't know if that has actually been officially booked. Let's check that quickly. So no, it has not. So I guess that opens the door a little bit. Maybe it is that, and I know Tatiana got hurt, but they supposedly it wasn't anything terrible. So if Tatiana is just going to walk into a title shot, which I guess is possible, then that leaves Lemos out there. So they could go that route for Virna. She has earned a fight that big. If not that, if we are going to get Tatiana and Lemos like a lot of people thought, then you could wait and see who comes out of the fight at UFC 300 between Jessica Andrade and Marina Rodriguez. Yeah. Obviously, if it's Marina, that doesn't work considering Virna just beat her. But if it is Jessica, then Virna and Jessica could also be a great scrap.
Okay, man. Let's put a bow on this fight night. Tell us who rose and who fell in your rankings system.
All right. Let's pull these babies up. Okay. So we had 3 risers and 2 fallers from this weekend. I will do the fallers first. Working up from the bottom of the card was Bill Algeo. He was my number 26 ranked featherweight coming into this fight. He takes a little bit of a tumble down to number 32 after the loss to Kyle Nelson. The other faller, it's only 3 spots. Usually I try to go like 4 or more when I'm picking names to put on here, but I felt like it was a little bit significant for a guy who has been perennially in the top 10, and that is Vicente Luque. So he has fallen from number 10 to number 13 in my welterweight rankings after the loss to Buckley. So we'll see if my man can right the ship. And then the risers, some all pretty significant ones, all more than 10 spots, or one is 10, so 10 or more, I should say. But again, from the bottom, we have Jacob Malkoun. He was my number 40 ranked middleweight coming in. He gets the W over Andre Petrosky, which jumps him up to number 29 in the middleweight division. So a nice move for him. Then we have the guy we spoke about, obviously moving up the line here, which was Kyle Nelson. He was my number 43 ranked featherweight coming in. He is now all the way up at number 25. So a really legitimizing jump for Kyle Nelson. And then the man in the co-main, Joaquin Buckley. He had been creeping up, steadily in these welterweight ranks. He was my number 22 welterweight entering this fight, and he now makes the big jump and is my number 12 ranked welterweight after the win.
Okay.
And that is all.
All right. Okay. So, Mark, let us now hop over to the preview portion of our little show here. No headlines because no Omar. Maybe next week, Omar, if he still is not going to join us, he can send us what he thinks are what he deems to be the relevant MMA news.
Yeah.
But that being said, let's hop over to the preview portion of the show. And the first thing we're going to talk about is PFL 1, which means the very first event for the 2024 regular season for the Professional Fighters League this year. The first event kicking off April 4th. So this Friday, San Antonio, Texas, at the Boeing Center. We're not going to talk about every fight on this card. We're only going to talk about the 4 fights on the main card. So do you want to start us off in the women's flyweight division, Mark?
Yeah, I just realized we did not get picks from Omar to share, which we definitely should have done. But, oh well. But yeah, I'll just mention quickly this PFL card. You can already see it if you look at the upcoming schedule here for the PFL. Now that they have the depth of the Bellator roster to work with, these cards already look better. They are some solid cards. There's actually a very good one coming up. But even this on this undercard, you have Lucas Brennan, who has looked very solid in Bellator. You have Kana Watanabe fighting Shauna Young. Steve Mowry and Oleg Popov is a good fight. Tyler Santos, who they picked up when she got oddly released from the UFC, she's fighting Lara Joanne on this card. Another ex-UFC fighter, Blagoy Ivanov, he's fighting Sergey Bilostini. So yeah, there's some quality names on this undercard. It's a pretty solid card. And then the one fight that moved on the main card, Daniel James was supposed to be fighting Tyrell Fortune. Fortune pulled out of the fight, so Daniel James has now been rebooked against Marcelo Golm, who he beat only 2 fights ago, but he's going to have to do it again. And they're now the feature prelim. He lost his main card spot. And the fight that jumped into it is the one that we'll open with quickly here, which is Dakota Dacheva versus Lisa Malden. And this is in the 125-pound division for the PFL. The odds are insanity. Dacheva is minus 1,700. Malden is plus 850. There's 1 inch of height and 3.5 inches of reach on the side of Dacheva. You know, the girl is listed at minus 2,000 in some places. Like, I'm not going to spend a ton of time breaking this one down. There's a lot of hopes that the PFL has pinned on Dacheva right now to deliver on the potential that she's shown and to become a star for them. She has run through PFL Europe. She's 10-0 with 9 finishes. She now enters the true PFL season for the first time. Her Muay Thai has been absolutely nasty. She'll have to deal with a wrestler here, which I guess is the X factor in this fight. If you ever wanted to try to create a reason why you want to touch that plus 850 line for Malden and hope that something crazy happens, but I'm certainly going to go with Dacheva. I will say round 2 TKO, maybe a knee is what starts it when Malden is looking for a takedown and Dacheva can catch her.
Hey, real quick shout out. Opening this PFL card is a fighter named Ty La Polona Johnson, who I just announced at APFC 9 back in November. He won the he won the APFC flyweight title. And he was going to defend it this weekend because this weekend's APFC 10.
Oh, wow.
But he had to pull out because he got signed by the PFL.
Wow.
So he had to vacate his APFC belt.
Wow. Dope.
Pretty dope. Not flyweight, I'm sorry, featherweight. Anyway, let's go on to the next one. Which fight are we talking about now?
Liz.
That's right. Liz Carmouche and Juliana Velasquez 3. Is it Velasquez or Quez?
Velasquez, I feel like they say. Now you have me fucking questioning it, though. I don't know.
That's okay. We'll go with one. It's forgivable.
Yeah, I think they say Velasquez.
So these two ladies have fought not once but twice before. This will be their 3rd time squaring off against one another, but their first time doing it under the PFL banner here this coming weekend. Let's see. We have Liz Carmouche, really needing no introduction to MMA purists, Strikeforce veteran, Invicta veteran, Bellator veteran, and of course UFC veteran. Now fighting for the PFL, and she might have the record for like most major promotions having fought for. She is the 40-year-old fighting out of San Diego, California. Her pro record stands at 20 wins with 7 defeats, with 45% of her victories coming by way of knockout. That is 9 of her 20 wins coming by knockout. Add another 5 submission wins to that. And she went 5-5 in the UFC. She fought for a title. She went undefeated 7-0 under the Bellator banner. And she's been on a bit of a tear, Mark. She has gone, I believe it's a 7-fight pro win streak now, all under the Bellator banner. And now she steps into the PFL Smart Cage this Friday against Juliana Velasquez out of Brazil. Her record stands at 12-2. She's fighting out of Rio. And likewise, she went 7-2 with Bellator and now steps into the Smart Cage for PFL for the very first time as well, taking on Carmouche for, like I said, the 3rd time. Mark, give us the odds. your thoughts on this fight, and ultimately give us your pick.
Okay. I'm sorry, bear with me just 1 second. I had to answer something here. And we're good. Okay. So the favorite is Liz, as you may expect. She is minus 245. Juliana is plus 185 on the other end. 2 inches of height and 1.5 inches of reach for Velasquez. And I basically know these measurements by heart at this point because this is the third consecutive time that Velasquez is fighting Liz Carmouche. I don't know if I've ever been more confused by a fight booking in my life than this one. Juliana got finished by Liz by TKO in round 4 in April of 2022. Okay, it was a bit of a controversial stoppage. We'll give her a chance to run that back. She gets that chance in December of 2022, and this time she is decisively beaten and armbarred in round 2. She has not fought since, and the PFL is like, you know what we should do? Let's make Liz beat her a third time. So I don't understand it. I really hope Liz wins. I don't, it would suck for her to, enter the PFL now and lose to a girl she's already proved she's better than twice. I am going to pick her again like I have done every time, including the first time when she was an underdog. Juliana has not proven that she can stop the wrestling. I don't see what would have changed. I know Liz is 40, which is a little bit of a wild card here, but she looks, obviously you just mentioned the run that she's on. She still looks good as ever. So who knows? Maybe we get a surprise, but I'm going to go with Liz again, and I will say it is another submission. I'll go round 3 sub for Liz Carmouche.
Dude, I completely agree. The only thing I'm going to differ on is that I think that for their third fight, I think Velasquez has enough experience in there with Carmouche to not get finished. And I think that she will this time get the moral victory of surviving to the bell, but I think it will be a UD for Carmouche. And it bears repeating, but I'll say it again. We want to hear your guys' predictions and picks for these fights as well. So please comment down below and who you're taking, Carmouche or Velasquez, in their third outing together. And that goes for all the fights that we're picking here tonight. Okay, let's move on here. Okay, in the heavyweight division, Dennis Golstov taking on Linton Vassell. So we have Russia on Britain, the old friends. Dennis Golstov, 32-8 as a pro. Like I said, fighting out of Russia. He's 33 years old, stands 6'5", has a 78-inch reach. Let's see. He's 10-3 under the PFL promotion, coming off of a loss to the PFL season 2023 champ Renan Ferreira. Taking on Linton Vassell this time in the first event for 2024, the Big Swarm. The 40-year-old fighting out of the UK. He's 24-8 as a professional. He went 12-5 with Bellator, and now he steps into the PFL Smart Cage for the first time, Mark. Give us your thoughts and your pick.
Yeah, these are fun to me. This is more what I'm looking for. The last one, we just had 2 Bellator fighters against each other who have already fought numerous times, as we said. Whereas here with the co-main and the main event, we have a top PFL heavyweight against a top Bellator heavyweight. And I think that is pretty fun and makes me interested to watch. So I'm into these two. The odds, Goltsov is favored. He's minus 150. Linton Vassell is plus 120. 1 inch of height for Goltsov, but 2.5 inches of reach for Vassell. He's going to have to walk a little bit of a fine line, especially early in the fight, but I'm going to go with Linton Vassell. And I say that because Dennis Goltsov is a big, dangerous fighter. He has a great jab for a heavyweight, which I always point out for him. He's very successful with his takedowns. He reigns really heavy ground and pound. He can submit you. He's a very tough package to deal with at heavyweight. But I have seen Linton Vassell weather enough storms at this point to believe he can weather another one if he needs to. I've loved the run that he has been on. He has been absolutely fantastic since moving to heavyweight. He's basically just as big as Goltsov, even though it doesn't feel that way, in your head maybe when you think about these two. And he's the better scrambler, which I think is going to be the difference. I think he can maneuver himself into some advantageous spots as this fight plays out. And I also think he's quicker and can beat Goltsov to spots. And if Linton ever gets on top, look out, because Goltsov has scary ground and pound. Vassell's might be even scarier. And I'm going to pick that late in this fight. As the fight, there could be tough moments for either guy, but as the fight goes on, I just trust Linton more to be the one who can push through and turn the tide. So I'm going to go Linton Vassell, round 3, TKO via ground and pound.
What are the odds on this fight again?
Goltsov -150. Linton is +120.
So that's not huge separation.
No, not at
right?
all. Pretty close.
I mean, I imagine that to be the case with two heavyweights like this. I'm a Vassell fan, but I'm going to go with the Russian here. And I agree. To me, I'm not taking this pick with a tremendous degree of confidence. But I'll go with Goltsov. I think he's going to get it done. And I think he can finish Vassell. I'm going to go with a TKO in the second round.
Nice.
Okay. Last one here, Mark. Main event, PFL 1 for 2024. Ante Delija taking on Valentin Moldavsky. So the Croatian, Ante Delija. He is 33 years old, fighting out of Croatia, like I said. He's 6'5", 79-inch reach. As a pro, his record stands at 24 victories with 5 defeats. He is 8-2 with the PFL. Of his 24 wins, 17 have been finishes, 10 knockouts, and 7 submissions. And he is riding a 5-fight win streak coming into this weekend. Excuse me, not weekend, this Thursday night. These fights are this Thursday night. The 4th is in only 2 days here, which is nice, which is smart. Not trying to compete with the UFC. They're owning the Thursday night slot. I like that. I like that a lot.
Yep.
Excuse me. And his opponent here, Valentin Moldavsky, 32 years old, fighting out of Russia. He's 6'1", 75-inch reach. He went 7-2 under the Bellator banner, and now he steps into the PFL Smart Cage to take on Delija. Mark, give us your pick.
Okay, so, oh my God, I don't have odds. I'm failing you. Hold on, I still have it open. I just forgot to write them for this one somehow. Okay, so Moldavsky is the slightest of favorites at -120, and Delija is actually -105, so no one is even plus money for this fight. So we're basically talking about a pick'em here. Delija is 4 inches taller and will have a 4-inch reach advantage, so a nice size advantage on his side of things. And this is a tough call. As I've thought about this fight, I've found ways to talk myself into both guys. On one side, I've considered that Valentin Moldavsky may just be too fast for Delija, and we may get like an in and out type of performance from him. One where Delija can't really find him too often to hurt him. There's not a ton of wrestling, and Moldavsky just kind of stays, as I said, in and out and wins behind the crisper boxing. I do think that's a possibility. Delija is not the fastest of heavyweights. But then on the other hand, you have the size of Delija that I just mentioned, the big finishing ability of Delija contrasted against the mostly non-finishing ability of Moldavsky. And when you factor in that Moldavsky has been beaten by both Ryan Bader and Linton Vassell recently, it's not all that hard to say, you know what, I'm just going to trust the bigger, more dangerous guy here. So I don't know. I'm torn. Nothing would really surprise me either way, but I think I'm going to choose to hang my hat on the fact that I'm not sure that Moldavsky packs enough pop to keep Delija off him. Now, he may be more mobile and just be able to skirt to the outside. He may even, if he can't keep Delija off him and Delija is walking him down, he may even be able to out wrestle him and just opt for the takedown there, which I wouldn't rule out. But I don't know. My mind wants to go Delija. I'm going to say Delija has the more meaningful offense, and I think it's going to be close. I'm actually going to say Ante Delija wins a split decision.
Very interesting. I'm with you on this one. I've never been very high on Valentin Moldavsky, which is unusual for me because I love all the Russian fighters because they're all so damn talented and tough. But yeah, again, I'm not with a tremendous degree of certainty on this one. But I'm going to go with the streaking fighter here from Croatia. I'm going to say that after across 5 rounds, he'll get it done, I think, on the scorecard. So I'm going to go with D'Elia by UD. And now, let's hop over to the UFC. This Saturday night, we have a UFC Fight Night, Allen versus Curtis 2. The two have fought before, but before we get to this main event that's going to go down at the UFC Apex in Las Vegas, Nevada, let's talk about honorable mention fights. So any fights or fighters in particular, Mark, that you think the folks listening and watching should be aware of this weekend?
Yeah, I will say Cynthia Calvillo against Piero Rodriguez is an interesting fight. I think Omar would have definitely called that one out if he was here, so I'll do that for him. And then the one other solid one that we're not going to talk about here just because it's on the prelims is Court McGee and Alex Morono. It's a little bit random to me. It seems like they're at different levels at this point in their career. Morono being the higher level, and I do think he wins, but it's certainly a noteworthy fight where we're very familiar with both guys. So that's a solid prelim banger.
Yeah, also a couple of undefeated prospects up on the card here, making their UFC debut. We have the 14-0 Gene Matsumoto.
Yep.
Another undefeated fighter, Cesar Almeida, 4-0, and Melissa Mullins, 6-0. So we'll see who keeps their O's after this Saturday. But let's start things off with one fight down on the prelims in the women's bantamweight division. Norma Dumont taking on the returning Germaine de Randamie. So Norma, the immortal Dumont, she is the, where's my stats here? She's 33 years old, of course, out of Brazil. I'm not sure if she trains out of Brazil, if she trains in the U.S.
That's a good question.
Maybe down in Brazil. Her pro record stands at 10-2 with 2 submission victories to her name, 8 decision victories. And she's been on one. She's been winning. And she's riding a 3-fight win streak coming into this weekend. Most recently defeating Chelsea Chandler back in July of this past year. Germaine de Randamie, the Iron Lady, the 39-year-old out of Holland. She's 5'9", 72.5-inch reach. Her pro record stands at 10 victories with 4 defeats, with 4 big wins by knockout, another one by submission. With the UFC, she has been 7-2, and she's coming off of a win over Julieta Pena, but that win was back in 2020, Mark.
Yes,
and now,
it was.
After quite the long layoff, she returns to the octagon. So what have the odd makers done with this one? And I want to know your take and your pick.
So they have gone with the youth and the activity and made Norma Dumont the favorite. You have me curious now. I want to see where this opened and if it was the public that pushed it this way. Let's see. No, so it's pretty much stayed just the way it opened. So I guess money's coming in on both sides. Norma Dumont is -175, and Germaine de Randamie is +145 as the underdog. 2 inches of height and 5.5 inches of reach for de Randamie. So she is significantly bigger, especially in the reach. And I got to tell you, man, Germaine de Randamie is a better mixed martial artist than Norma Dumont. I don't really have any doubt about that. I'm a little surprised by these odds. You know, the only doubt, which I guess is what is driving this, is that GDR is 39 years old and she has not fought in 3.5 years, which is certainly a very long time, especially at that age. But if she's still close to herself, I have a hard time seeing how Norma beats her because she's not going to out-wrestle her. It's going to be a striking match. And in a striking match, especially with 2 inches of height and 5.5 inches of reach on her side to work with, de Randamie is going to win. I don't know. we like Norma Dumont on this show, but she's not unbeatable. She got beat by Macy Chasson, and on paper, de Randamie is a much better fighter than Macy Chasson. So I don't know. Maybe I'm believing too much in the past performances and past results of de Randamie, and that time is long past now. Obviously, she left. I'm pretty sure she became a mother. A lot of years of inactivity, so a lot of changes in her life. But the technique to me is just superior. So I'm going to go with Germaine to win UD.
I feel like, I mean, I love your take in a vacuum, but I feel like those life decisions, or not decisions, those life events that have happened to her, you know, motherhood, pregnancy, childbirth.
Yep.
I can't think of too many examples of ladies who have stepped away, had a kid, and come back and still compete at a super high level. Obviously, Mackenzie Dern, I know, is a mom. I can't think of too many. I can't think of a big enough sample size to have any degree of confidence in either direction. So that being said, I lack confidence in Germaine de Randamie. I mean, the layoff in and of itself, but the fact that she took time to go through a pregnancy and a birthing, and obviously, as you and I both alluded to at the beginning of this podcast tonight, the craziness and sleeplessness of raising young kids.
Yes.
No, I'm gonna stay with Norma Dumont, and I'm gonna side with Vegas on this one. Her obviously her youth, and obviously her activity, and she has been looking very good lately. So I'm gonna go with the Brazilian by a unanimous decision for this one. And now we hop up into the main card.
Yes, sir.
Let's see. Oops, got rid of that tab. We have opening the main card for this UFC Fight Night at the Apex. We have in the in the lightweight division, Trevor Peek taking on Charlie Campbell. So Trevor Peek, the 29-year-old, fighting out of Chattanooga, Tennessee. His pro record stands at 9-1, and 2-1 under the UFC, coming off of a victory against Muhammad Yahya back in October, and now he steps back into the octagon, taking on the young and impressive Charlie the Cannibal Campbell, the 28-year-old out of New York. He's a Long Islander. He trains out of Longo and Weidman MMA out on Long Island. Listed at 6 feet tall, 72.5-inch reach, and his pro record 8-2. And he is 1-0 thus far in the UFC after losing on Contender Series in a fight that was, I remember that fight. That was very Pat Barry, Czech Congo, the way it played out. Campbell was winning that fight, and he was finding success, and he hurt his opponent very, very badly. And his opponent, with barely any wits about him, fired off, I think, like a straight right hand, and it landed right down the pipe, and it put Charlie out. But he got his opportunity. He came back for his UFC debut. They gave him another chance, and he was very impressive, defeating Alex Reyes this past September. Now he steps back in there for his second fight under the UFC banner against Trevor Peek. Mark, give us those odds and your thoughts and your pick.
All right, so Charlie is the favorite here. He is -200. Trevor Peek is +165. The size is on Charlie's side. He's 3 inches taller. He'll have a 2.5-inch reach advantage. And it's a little bit of a tough call because Charlie Campbell is probably the more skilled fighter on paper, but Trevor Peek is, the fighter who is more Trevor Peek. So that makes it a 50-50 fight. Yes. I'm torn on whether Campbell is good enough to overcome the craziness and the pace and the pressure that Trevor Peek brings, because it is a weapon. He knows how to use it. But I think I am going to believe that the technique of Campbell is enough. I'm not impressed by either fighter that Trevor Peek has beaten in the UFC thus far. The more credible opponent that he did fight was Chepe Mariscal, who we're actually going to talk about in a little bit, and he did beat Trevor Peek. So I think I'm going to say that Campbell can do that too. And I kind of want to say Campbell can even catch him, because Peek can be pretty sloppy in there, which is, it's almost what he's meaning to do. He's trying to turn everything into a brawl, but I like Campbell. I think he's sharp from what we've seen, and I think he could catch him. I don't know if he finishes him. Peak's never been finished. He has that zombie quality to him, but I think Campbell can at least hurt him a time or two, and I'm going to say Campbell wins a UD.
Yeah, I agree with you on this one. I have been impressed by Campbell and his striking prowess. I think he got caught on Contender Series. Otherwise, I think it would be a different hype story altogether for him. And I agree. I think Peak is going to try to make it ugly, but I think Campbell's going to be too slick and too wise for that. He's great at keeping his distance. He has great hands. He's an overall great striker, and I think he's going to find a finish. I'm going to give him the TKO in the 3rd round for Campbell. And Long Island, nice. Let's go. Let's see. In the heavyweight division, Lukas Brzezic taking on Walter Walker. What a pair of names on these two gents. And correct me if I'm butchering either one of them.
The Lucas one is like Bershki or something, but I don't remember what it even is to tell you. Brzezic, it might be
Brzezic or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go with that for now. The Bull Brzezic out of Poland. He's 31 years old. His pro record 8-4-1 with 1 no contest. Looking for his very first UFC win. He's been 0-3 thus far in the UFC, so this might be his last chance. He lost to Martin Buday, Carl Williams, and most recently, Waldo Cortez Acosta back in August. Standing across from the Brazilian, Walter Walker. Jesus Christ. Is that a real name? His nickname is even better. The Clean Monster. Drug test this man right now.
Which is funny because he looks like a fucking animal.
That's why he named himself that, the Clean Monster.
Yeah. It's like me? I'm definitely clean. It's in my name.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you know who he is, by the way?
Who he is? No.
He's Johnny Walker's brother.
Oh, is he really?
Yes. From Russia, which I don't even understand how that is the case, but he is Johnny Walker's brother.
Like his biological brother?
Yes. I guess maybe he just moved to Russia and now his shit says fighting out of Russia.
Let's see. Yes. On Tapology, it says he's born in Brazil, fighting out of Moscow, Russia.
There you go.
Wow. But his name is Walter with a V. It's so strange.
It's super weird.
Okay, anyway. So just like his brother Johnny, he is a giant. Walter stands at 6'6", has an 81-inch reach, and he's an undefeated pro, Mark, coming into this Saturday night. He's 11-0. Let's see. 6 wins by knockout, one other one by submission. And thus far, this is his UFC debut, Mark. So what did Vegas do with this Walker brother?
So he's a pretty big favorite. He is -310, and Brzezic is +250. 2 inches of height and 3 inches of reach for Walker. And I'm not going to spend a whole bunch of time breaking this fight down. It's kind of a random main card fight. I guess they wanted to showcase Walker here, but Brzezic is 0-3 in the UFC to this point. It's definitely a little bit random. And I can't say I've been impressed with Brzezic in any of those 3 thus far. So even though I don't know Walker all that well, I know he's 11-0. I've seen some highlights. He's a beast physically. Obviously, he's the brother of Johnny, as we said, so that has to count for at least something. I'm gonna roll with him. He's got 4 straight finishes by knockout. We just saw Brzezic finished in his last fight, so I will say it happens again. I'll go round 2 TKO for Walter Walker.
Yeah, this is a sure pick, a sure fight. 2 big heavyweights. You're totally right. It's a pretty random main card location here for this fight. But I will roll with the giant, clean monster Brazilian. I'll say knockout round 1 for Walter Walker. You can't make this up, man. You can't make this up with some of these guys.
No.
Okay, here we go. A little bit more of a typical, more expected main card fight for this kind of fight night. Ignacio Bahamondes taking on Christos Giagos. So here we go. Bahamondes is the 26-year-old fighting out of Chicago, Illinois by way of Santiago, Chile. A professional record, 14 victories with 5 defeats. Under the UFC banner, he is now 3-2 coming into this weekend. After winning on Contender Series, he lost his UFC debut against John Makdessi, then rattled off a 3-fight win streak, which was snapped most recently by Ludovic Klein back in August. And now he steps back into the octagon against the Spartan, Christos Giagos. Am I saying that right? Giagos?
I think it's just Giagos. I don't think he says
Giagos?
the G, if I'm remembering correctly.
Okay. Fighting out of Hawthorne, California. He is a California native. His pro record, 20 victories and 11 defeats, with 8 big wins coming by way of knockout. Add another 4 finishes by submission. And he is looking to even his UFC record, which right now is 6-7. So a win this weekend would even him in the UFC at 7-7, Mark. So give us your thoughts, Mark, and your take.
All right, so this is the last of the wider odd fights on this card. Bahamondes is a minus 330 favorite. Giagos is plus 260. Big size for Bahamondes, as he almost always has. In this one, he'll be 5 inches taller. He'll have a 4-inch reach advantage. And, you know, Giagos is not an easy night for anyone. He's a guy who will make you earn it in there. He doesn't go away, but when I say he doesn't go away, I mean like in terms of his push, and he won't quit in there. He can get finished though, and he has been finished in 3 of his last 4. And he's fighting a guy in Bahamondes who is dangerous everywhere and who's going to be much bigger than him. So I think that's where this one ends up. It's interesting because Ignacio has lost to both of the more proven names that he's fought in John Makdessi and Ludovic Klein. His wins are not over anyone, you know, too proven, but I think we've seen enough from him, from what he's shown in those wins, for me to trust him over Giagos. I think he can play the range game. I think he starts to land more and more as he gets the range down. You know, Giagos will try to wrestle for sure. He's going to have to counter that and maybe get up a time or two, but I think the size will help. And I think eventually he starts to hurt Giagos and finishes. I could see him finish with strikes or with a club and sub, honestly, but I'll go round 2 TKO for Ignacio.
Yeah, I'm a big Bahamondes fan, man. I think he's really impressive, and I think he's really a guy to watch here in the UFC in his weight class at lightweight. So I'm going to go with him. I agree. I'm going to think he's going to finish this fight, and I think that he is going to knock out Giagos. I'll say in the first round for Bahamondes.
Yes.
Okay. The guy that you just, alluded to, Morgan, how do you say his last name, this French guy?
Charrière,
taking on Chepe Mariscal, or Chepe,
yeah.
Chepe Mariscal in the featherweight division. So, Charrière, the last pirate, the 28-year-old, originally from Poissy, France. He trains out of France. His pro record, 19-9 and 1 draw, with 11 wins by knockout. Add another 3 submission victories to that. He won his UFC debut, and now he steps back into the octagon against Chepe Mariscal, 31 years old, fighting out of Denver, Colorado. His professional record, 15 victories with 6 defeats, 2-0 now under the UFC. And now he faces off with Charrière from France. Mark, give us your thoughts and those odds.
So this one is nearly a pick 'em. Charrière is minus 125. Mariscal is plus 105. So very tight. The reach is identical. 1 inch of height for Morgan. This is a tricky fight to pick just because of how gritty and tough and undeterred Chepe Mariscal has been by seemingly anyone to this point, but I loved Morgan Charrière in his debut. The kicking game is a real weapon for him, and I think that'll be a key here because I think he can use those kicks to keep his range, to help him to avoid a slugfest with Chepe, to help keep that pressure of Chepe off him a bit, and just win this one behind his technique. He's a finisher. He showed that in his debut against Zucchini, and I could see it take a bit longer here because, like I said, Chepe is a dog and he's going to bring it in there, but I think he can get him too. So I will say late round 2 TKO for Morgan Charrier.
I like it, and I agree. I too was very impressed by his kicking game in his debut a little while back, and I'm excited to see him back here in here, man. And I think at featherweight he is going to be some real new blood here. I think he's Chepe Mariscal is a great test for him given his toughness, but I'm going to be looking for Charrier to get another finish. I'm going to say round 2 knockout for Charrier. More talent out of France. I feel like there were many, many years where there was like almost nobody from France.
Yeah,
now we have a bit of a crop.
The fact that they legalized it, I feel like, has created a bit of a boom.
Sure. Okay, we hop up to, we're staying in the featherweight division for a fun one, man, between Alexander Hernandez and Damon Jackson. So Hernandez, the great ape, 31 years old, fighting out of San Antonio, Texas, a professional record consisting of 14 victories with 7 defeats. Under the UFC, he is an even 6-6. And he's coming off of a decision loss to Bill Algeo. After going 9-1 as a pro, he lost to Donald Cowboy Cerrone in what was his newest, biggest high-profile fight of his career up to that point. He talked a lot of shit to Cowboy, who then schooled him within 2 rounds. And it has been up and down for Alexander the Great Ape Hernandez ever since. But he's looking to right the ship again this weekend against Damon the Leech Jackson, 35 years old, fighting out of Dallas, Texas. His professional record consisting of 22 victories with 6 defeats and 1 draw and 1 no contest. Under the UFC, he is 5-4 with 1 draw and 1 no contest. And he is a submission threat, Mark. Out of his 22 victories, 15 have come by way of submission. But he, too, is looking to get back into the win column after losing back-to-back fights to Dan Ige and Billy Q. So here we go, Mark. We have Jackson, we have Hernandez going down at featherweight, which also bearing in mind, new weight class for Alexander Hernandez, relatively new, because he fought at lightweight for a while. Okay, Mark, give us your take and your pick and the odds, please.
Yeah, I'm happy to see these guys both get a co-main spotlight. Pretty cool spot for them here. Hernandez is the favorite. He's -200. Jackson is +165 on the other end. Jackson is 2 inches taller, but Hernandez will have the 1-inch reach advantage. And I see this as a matchup where Alexander Hernandez could potentially shine. Damon Jackson is talented, of course. You know, you always got to be wary of not allowing him into an advantageous grappling position because it could end quickly. But I think Hernandez is going to be a tough puzzle for him because I see Hernandez as being the faster fighter, the stronger fighter. He hits harder. He's the better athlete. And I don't think he's going to be an easy guy for Jackson to drag down or to hold down. Hernandez has pretty solid takedown D. He can scramble up if needed. And I really just think he can force most of this fight into being a striking affair. And I actually think we could see a KO from Hernandez here, which has kind of escaped him for a while after having some early in his career. And it's tough because Jackson just did take a lot from Billy Q in his last fight and stayed in there. But Billy Q doesn't really carry power like that, whereas Hernandez does. And I think Hernandez is due for one. So, like I said, it could be tricky. The risk of a submission fighting Damon Jackson always exists, but I'm going to go with Alexander Hernandez to find that knockout, and I will say he gets it in round 2.
So Hernandez has only been submitted once in his pro career. That was by Renato Moicano back in 2022, February of 2022. It was a rear naked choke. I believe it was kind of a club and sub situation, but Renato Moicano carries way more firepower, in my opinion, than does a Damon Jackson. So I don't know if Damon Jackson is going to be able to get Alexander Hernandez in that kind of hurt position to the point where he can wrap him up and find a submission. Of course, he's a different kind of a submission threat than a Renato Moicano. But I agree, and I'm picking with you again. I'm going to take Hernandez. I still want to like Alexander Hernandez. I feel like a bunch of his losses, I'm like, God damn. For some reason, I like him. I'm a fan, and I like his fighting style. I just feel like a number of fights just haven't gone his way. But this one, I think, very much could. I don't think Jackson has enough firepower coming Hernandez's way to be a difference maker in this fight. And I think Hernandez, I hope he's well-rounded enough to keep that submission threat at bay. Give me Hernandez by decision. Please, God. Okay, main event time. UFC Fight Night. Allen versus Curtis 2. Brendan Allen taking on Chris Curtis once again. Here we go. Let me cue this up. So we have Brendan all in Allen, the 28-year-old fighting out of Covington, Louisiana. His professional record, 23 victories and 5 defeats. Of his 23 wins, 5 have been knockouts and 14 have come by way of submission. With the UFC, he's 11-2 after winning on Contender Series. And he's coming off of a win against the very dangerous fellow submission fighter in Paul Craig. And Brendan Allen, Mark, is riding a 6-fight win streak coming into this weekend, taking on Chris Curtis once again. Chris Curtis, the 36-year-old, fighting out of Las Vegas, Nevada, out of Extreme Couture. Under the UFC, he is 5-2 with 1 no contest. He has a little bit of PFL experience as well. And he's coming off of a split decision victory against Marc-Andre Barrio in January of this year. And he's right back in the octagon. As I mentioned, this is a rematch. The two fought in December of 2021, so sort of in the middle tail end of the pandemic. And Chris Curtis got the better of that fight, defeating Brendan Allen by TKO with knees and punches. In fact, that was Brendan Allen's last loss after this win streak. So he's looking to right that ship and get that one back, Mark. So, Mark, give us the odds and your thoughts and your pick.
Yeah, just quick. This one was supposed to be Brendan Allen against Marvin Vettori, which I was really pumped for.
Oh, that's right.
I can't remember when that was that Vettori. I think it was only maybe 2 weeks or less. I don't think it was much longer ago than that. So pretty short notice that Curtis has jumped in here. Not a bad consolation prize for Brendan Allen to try to get that loss back. I'm sure that loss bothers him. So, he loses the huge fight, but at least he gets this one that I'm sure intrigues him. He is favored here. He's minus 210, he being Brendan Allen. Chris Curtis is plus 170. 4 inches of height for Allen, but actually a half-inch reach advantage for Chris Curtis. It's an interesting fight because on paper, honestly, Chris Curtis is a tough matchup for Brendan Allen. And of course, we already know he can beat him because he did just that 2 years ago, or 2.5 years ago, whatever it was. But the reason I say he's tough is because he's not easy to take down. He pressures and he rips the body. And all of those things are things that are potentially issues for Brendan Allen at different times in his career. And, as dominant as he has been, if he's not able to everyone that he has beat on this stretch is someone he's been able to take down. If he's not able to take Chris down, things could get pretty interesting here. But you got to remember that even though he did get finished in the first fight, he took Chris down. He managed to do it in that fight. He's one of the few who have. He even had a submission attempt in there. And yes, he got caught, but this Brendan Allen is levels above that Brendan Allen. I really believe that Brendan Allen has evolved significantly since that fight in every way. Whereas Chris is basically the same guy, in my opinion. I just think Brendan has become so much more comfortable with how his game works and how it blends together. You used to see him thinking in there more, and now it's just so natural. The jiu-jitsu has reached just absurd levels. And I'm going to trust that. I'm going to trust that development. That's the differentiator for me. Also, Allen is 8 years younger than Chris Curtis. He's 28 now, as opposed to being 25 the first time they met, which was pretty young. He's in his physical prime now. So, there may be someone out there who can stop Brendan Allen as he keeps climbing here. But I just don't think Chris Curtis in the year 2024 is that guy. So there could be some tricky spots. He may certainly have to eat a body shot or two en route to getting this W. But I think Brendan Allen can get Chris Curtis down, and I think he can do it more than once. And Chris has only been subbed one time in his whole career. But give me Brendan Allen to make it 2. I think he is that slick, and I will take him to win by submission in round 3.
Like it. The thing that I like most that you said is that you're trusting the development of Brendan Allen, and I could not agree more. His last few fights, man, he has just been unconscious. I mean that in the best way.
Yeah,
obviously, he's just flowing. And he has a disturbing degree of like calmness.
Yep.
In the octagon. I mean, what he did to Paul Craig was just unsettling for a guy who is so good in Paul Craig. For he looked like he was like sparring, like he was training. Like he was like, "Hey guys," he's like, "Hey family at home. Love you, baby. See you soon. I'm going to go fuck this guy up." Really, really calmly.
Yeah.
He did, dude. Even in the fight, he was so calm.
Yeah. I agree.
That being said, the fact that these two fought before and Chris Curtis finished him does complicate things. I think Chris Curtis is a ridiculously well-rounded and talented mixed martial artist. But yeah, that being said, I think that Brendan Allen evens this series at 1 apiece, and I'm less confident in you in the submission win for Brendan Allen because Chris Curtis is so well-rounded. He's only ever been submitted once. I think his stature helps with that. He's a very compact middleweight.
Yeah.
But I'll go with Brendan Allen in 5 rounds. I'll go with Brendan Allen by UD, and there you have it, Mark. We did it. And we're getting out of here just before midnight.
Like it. Damn, I picked a lot of finishes. I hope that happens. Yeah. Be entertaining.
Yes, Omar, feel better, buddy.
Nice
we're thinking about you. And what did you say?
I was saying done before midnight is a nice treat. I was being selfish. You're over here telling Omar we're thinking about him.
You're like, I'm not thinking about you, Omar. I'm thinking about bed.
No, Omar, of course. Feel better, buddy. Hopefully we see you on here next week.
Yeah, man. Take care of your health. Take care of yourselves. Take care of yourself and each other. I think that's from Maury or Jerry Springer.
Maybe.
Anyhow. All right, buddy. Enjoy the fights this weekend, and we will catch up next week. Talk about UFC 300.
All right, man. It was a pleasure.
As always.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Peace.